welcome to another literature in English class, and we started off on the analysis of the text Lion and the Jewel. And in the last class we talked about, or in the first class when we started, we talked about the author or the playwright, Wole Soyinka, right? And then in the following class we talked about the plot and the setting of the work of play. So you will definitely not understand what we are doing now if you do not read, if you have not watched the previous video. So go back, watch the previous video, and probably get a hold of what the plot and the setting looks like, and then you're going to have an understanding of what we're going to be talking about today, which are the themes of the themes we can find in the work of play, Lion and the Jewel. Okay. All right, let's look at it. So I said we're going to talk about characters, but let's push the characters to a much later video. Let's talk about the themes that we can find. What are the themes? They are if you remember our previous lessons, right? They are the lessons, right, that we find or we can get from a literary play or a literary work, right? What is that lesson that the author or playwright seems to pass across to his reader or audience, right? Those are what we call the themes of a work of literature, all right? The first theme we're going to be looking at is how the theme of how the lion got the jewel. Okay, now the title of this book is The Lion and the Jewel. By now, if you have read the book and if you've been following us from the last class, you will know who the lion is now and who the jewel is. But let's move on so that if you don't have an idea, you probably catch up. Now, the lion refers to Baroka, and as the text goes on, whereas Sadiku, Baroka's most senior wife, tells Sidi that the lion sent me. Okay, that can be found in page 19. We see Sadiku refer to Baroka as the lion. Okay, so he's not just the lion figuratively, he's also called the lion literally by his wife, Sadiku. So Sidi is already aware of who the lion is, right? The jewel, on the other hand, is a term used by Lakunle to reply to those who call him a fool for his actions, being an educated person, whereas the villagers are not learned, and then mock him for his learning. Lakunle asks, for that, what is a jewel to pigs? Page 3, okay? In that case, we see that Lakunle may have considered himself a jewel since he is the most educated person, or he's the most educated in Ilujile at that time. The other and more viable meaning of jewel refers to Sidi, the jewel of Ilujile, as Sidi is addressed by, as Sidi addresses herself. Sidi addresses herself as the jewel of Ilujile most likely because of her beauty. Okay, she's the most beautiful girl in the village, which is what I just said, right? The jewel referring to Sidi is more, you tilt more to calling Sidi the jewel than Lakunle because of her beauty and because she has become a magazine matter. The news of her beauty has traveled far and near. Now, we know that Sidi is a very beautiful lady. Okay, she's very, very beautiful. She's a very young, beautiful lady, right? Who is caught in between Baroka and Lakunle, asking for her hand or seeking for her hand in marriage. All right, so she's much more the favorite to call the jewel than Lakunle, even though Lakunle calls himself the jewel as per on the basis of him being the most educated in the village. But Sidi is also, or is more, it's more plausible considering the fact that she is the most beautiful and jewels are beautiful. So would most likely call Sidi jewel because she's beautiful and jewels are beautiful. So let's move on. While Lakunle boasts on his having education, Sidi boasts on her beauty, right? The word jewel in normal day-to-day word has more to do with beauty than with education, intellect, or learning or knowledge, right? Between Sidi the jewel and Baroka the lion, there is a notion that the former is more important than the latter. So there's a way that the writer Wole Soyinka put this book in a way that CD was placed on a more prominent pedestal than Baroka. She was given more importance than Baroka. Okay. A look at the magazine images shows that whereas CD is well placed in the book, Baroka's image is near the village latrine. That's funny. With this location, CD is convinced that she is more important than Baroka. She's not even just convinced. She's not even the only one that's convinced. We, the readers, are convinced that she is the jewel of the book. Because, I mean, you would pick somebody who is well placed in a magazine, probably the front cover, over somebody who is just, took a picture beside the village latrine. I mean, what does that send to you? Right? Now, her rushing to Baroka as soon as she learns that he is sexually deflated is because she wants the old man's devaluation to be complete. So CD's aim CD wanted to totally devalue Baroka because news had come to her or to the whole village that he was now impotent. Okay, so she wanted to totally devalue him, right? She thinks only herself will be reckoned with in the village. Lakunle is not considered a match, right? Since the whole village thinks he's crazy, right? So because of Lakunle's persistence or constant, drive to impose the Western world on the village of Elujile, the whole village thinks that his ideas are just out of this world. They think that he's mad, he's running crazy or something. So he's totally out of the picture when it comes to CD and Baroka, right? And their, love battle. Okay, so Lakunle is almost pushed to the sideline, right? Let's look at one of the texts or an excerpt. The whole world knows the madman of Elujile who calls himself a teacher. Thus, the balance of prominence, so we see that in page 3. So we can now see that the balance of prominence is in CD's favor. However, when the lion places cunning and trickery at his service, he shows that beauty is not the most prized quality in the world. So now, Baroka knows that everybody in the village, Baroka, Lakunle, Sadiko, they all know that CD is very, very beautiful, right? But then Baroka wanted to prove both with his trickery and and his deceptive way that beauty was not the only thing in the world, right? Sometimes being smart is what goes, right? So Baroka deceives Sadiko, his wife, into believing that he has become sexually degraded, impotent. In other words, the wife in turn goes out to announce that the Baroka's manhood is no longer working. And by this flippancy, right, CD re-accepts Baroka's invitation to visit him with the intention to find out if Sadiko's declaration is true or not. So Bale had initially invited CD to come and visit him, but she didn't go because she's the village beauty, right? So but then when Sadiko spread the word that Baroka was now impotent, CD wanted to confirm, so she accepted the invitation of Baroka to come and visit him, and just to find out if Sadiko was actually telling the truth. As an Igbo proverb says, the monkey that wants to see everything receives the bullet shot on his forehead. I like Igbo proverbs. I don't know why. They are very, very funny, right? So this one says, the monkey that wants to see everything receives the bullet shot on the forehead. So if you always want to know everything, you will always get into trouble. Always, right? So sometimes it's just best to keep a low profile and just stay low, right? You don't have to know everything, right? All right. So it is Baroka's wish to have his next wife, and this he achieves by grabbing yet another one through craftiness. So Baroka did not even actually have the approval of CD to get married to her. It got her through craftiness and trickery. Okay, so that is the first one we talked about. How the lion got the jewel. So we see that Baroka is the lion and CD the jewel, and we see that Baroka got the jewel. Baroka the lion got the jewel through trickery. That's the first theme. Okay. The next thing we're going to be looking at is the struggle, which is a very, very predominant theme in this work, right? The struggle between tradition and modernity, right? That's what this play is basically all about, almost from the beginning to the end. There's a struggle, there's a battle, a never-ending war between tradition and modernity. It still happens in our day-to-day, in today's world, right? We see modernity trying to, override anything and everything that tradition still has on its people, on us, right? So we see traditional ways of medicine, and then we see modern ways of medicine trying to overshadow it and try to outperform it, right? Some of them are working perfectly, some aren't working. The traditional ways in some areas still seem to be, firmly on ground, right? But let's continue. Baroka represents tradition, right? And Lakunle depicts modern consciousness. CD, on the other hand, is quite neutral, right? She's not deeply traditional, since it's not even clear to us what she abhors about Baroka. We don't know why she actually hates Baroka, apart from the fact that Baroka was everybody's superior until CD's image appeared in the book, right? We don't know what she hated Baroka for. We don't know. We just realized that she disliked Baroka, right? And aside from the fact that he was the ballet, right? And he was everybody's superior until CD's image popped up in the magazine. Okay. Thus, we see that CD is neither traditional nor Christian, right? All the allusion Lakunle makes about her to the Bible does not touch her, nor does she doesn't even show awareness of the fact that maybe she knows of such allusion, right? For example, when Lakunle mentioned the names of faith, names of women of faith in the Bible, with Bathsheba, David's concubine, she does not object to being carved, to being called his Bathsheba, along with Ruth, Rachel, and Esther, right? We see that in page 20, right? So Lakunle was trying to, make use of allusion of the Bible to CD, but she doesn't seem to be aware. She doesn't even seem to understand what he's talking about. She does not object, right, to be because she does not even know what he was talking about. So we see that CD is kind of neutral. We don't know if she's traditional, and we don't know if she's Christian. Okay. Now, when the traveler brings light to Ilujile, Baroka does not acknowledge what he is meant to achieve. Okay. Similarly, tradition fights off the intruder. The surveyor who supervises the construction of the railroad. Baroka, who represents tradition, achieves this by bribing the white surveyor, right? So there's this surveyor that is in construction of the railroad, right? So he's trying to fight modern invasion. Baroka is the traditional figure in this book, right? And he's trying to fight off any iota or any element of modern invasion, right? He wants the tradition to stay, right? So he was trying to stop the construction of the railroad by bribing the white surveyor. The rail tracks are then moved to and through other neighboring towns. So after bribing the white surveyor, right, the surveyor moved the rail tracks to other neighboring villages and through the other neighboring villages. So this way, Baroka blocks civilization, which would have come to Ilujile. Lakunle is, so we see that Baroka as tradition is constantly fighting modernization, okay? Lakunle is naturally one we think should have inherited the mantle of the new, okay? But he merely stops at naming the elements of modernity rather than their concretized forms. So Lakunle should have been, the face of modernization, but then he really didn't push it in a very, very powerful way. He just started mentioning the elements of, not paying bride price, eating with plates. Those were just elements. He really did not force, although he was stylishly creeping it in, he wasn't very, very firm about it the way Baroka was. I mean, Baroka had to go to the extent of bribing a surveyor to not construct a railroad, right, just to avoid modernization. But Lakunle was just basically talking and talking and talking. His notion of modernity is superficial. Lakule's, it was superficial. Eating with forks and knives, eating on the table, kissing and such stuff, right? Now, even though when he mentioned the word kissing, CD describes kissing as unclean, right? A claim which Lakule does not contradict, except to say that it was the civilized way of romance. So Lakule's idea of modernization was just basically superficial. He was looking at the good part. He wasn't talking about, the other sides of it, right? He was just looking at the not so important parts of the modernization, right? So, in the end, tradition wins modernity when Baroka proves that the modern and tradition can subsist side by side, that he and city can represent this newfound energy. The old must flow into the new. CD, not blind itself or stand foolishly apart. That's Baroka's voice in page 54, right? So tradition wins in the end. The struggle between tradition and modernity. Tradition wins in the end. How that, in that Baroka marries CD to, let them become the figures of tradition and modernity, right? So he was of the opinion that tradition and modernity can stand side by side, okay, and be better, and just be a combination of the two, not necessarily tradition taking the whole thing or modernity taking the whole thing. When Baroka sets out to defeat Lakunle, he uses the school teacher's language. He uses his own language to do that. The school teacher and I must learn one from the other. Okay, so Baroka does not use traditional language to try to defeat the school teacher Lakunle. He even uses English, to try and sway over Lakunle, which is a good move. All right. So we're going to stop there for this class, and in the next class we're going to be talking about more themes on the play, the lion, and the jewel. Okay. We don't want to, choke you with so much content in one video, so it's easy to digest and easy to understand. Okay, so in the next class we're going to be talking about more themes on of the play, lion and the jewel, right? But until then, let's talk about what we talked about. We talked about how the lion got the jewel, the struggle between tradition and modernity. So I'll see you in the next class where we'll talk about more themes of the play, lion and the jewel.